Before his name appeared in headlines, before rockets landed themselves, before electric cars and bold promises of life on Mars, Elon Musk was simply a child who did not fit in. He was born in 1971, in South Africa, far from Silicon Valley, far from the center of the technological world. From an early age, Elon felt different, not because he wanted to be, but because he saw the world in another way. While other children tried to belong, he spent long hours inside his own thoughts. He thought about the future. He thought about machines. He thought about questions that most people never stop to ask. This difference came with a cost. He was quiet, often misunderstood, and many times, alone. But in that silence, something important was forming. A mind that refused to accept reality as it was. A mind that kept asking a dangerous question. Why does the world work this way, and not another? Elon did not dream of being famous. He did not dream of being rich. He dreamed of understanding how things worked. And more importantly, how they could work better. That curiosity became his refuge. Books became his escape. Science fiction became a map of possible futures. While others lived in the present, Elon lived years ahead. He imagined worlds powered by technology. Worlds shaped by logic, innovation, and progress. At the time, no one noticed. No one could imagine that this quiet, introspective child was laying the foundation for a mindset that would later challenge entire industries. This story does not begin with success. It does not begin with money. It begins with curiosity, with isolation, with a refusal to accept limits. Because long before Elon Musk tried to change the world, he first questioned it. And those questions would soon turn into action. As a child, Elon didn't just imagine the future. He tried to build it. At 10 years old, he encountered a machine that would change his life. A computer. To others, it was entertainment. To Elon, it was a language. A language that could turn thoughts into action. He spent hours teaching himself how it worked. Reading manuals, testing commands, breaking things, fixing them again. No one showed him how to do it. He learned alone. While other children played games, Elon learned how games were made. He discovered that code could control logic, movement, rules, and with that discovery, something clicked. At just 12 years old, he created his own video game. It was simple, basic, but it worked. He sold it for $500. That moment mattered, not because of the money, but because it proved something powerful. That ideas could be built. That knowledge could create value. That creation was possible, even at a young age. But the world outside his screen remained difficult. He was still different, still misunderstood, still alone. Yet now, he had something new. A sense of control, a sense of direction. He was no longer just observing the world. He was learning how to shape it. And without realizing it, the child who once felt out of place was becoming a creator. But learning to create was only the beginning. To turn ideas into reality, he would have to leave everything behind. Learning to create was only the beginning. Soon, Elon realized something important. Knowledge alone was not enough. Ideas needed friction, pressure, reality. For the first time, he tried to use what he knew outside the safety of his own imagination. He looked at the world around him and saw inefficiency everywhere. Systems that were slow, processes that made no sense, problems waiting to be solved. This was his first real shift. From learning to applying. He was no longer asking only how things work. He started asking a different question. How can this be improved? How can this be built better? How can technology change this? These questions pushed him forward. They forced him to think beyond code, beyond books, beyond theory. He began to understand something crucial. Creating was not about perfection. It was about action, about testing ideas against reality, about failing, learning, and trying again. This was the moment when curiosity met responsibility, the moment when imagination collided with the real world. And although the results were still small, something had changed forever. Elon was no longer just a learner. He was becoming a builder. And this first leap into the real world was only the beginning. But understanding the real world was not enough. At some point, he would have to risk everything. At some point, curiosity is no longer enough. Learning is no longer enough. There comes a moment when comfort becomes the enemy. For Elon, that moment arrived early. He understood something most people avoid. You cannot change the world halfway. You either commit, or you don't begin at all. This was not about talent. It was about risk, about walking away from safety in exchange for possibility. He knew the odds were against him. He knew failure was likely. But he also knew something else. Doing nothing was the greatest risk of all. So he made a choice. No backups, no safety nets, no excuses. Everything would go into the attempt. Time, energy, focus. This was the moment when doubt became irrelevant. When hesitation disappeared. Because once you choose everything, there is no room for fear. Only movement, only action, only forward. This was not a dramatic leap. It was a quiet decision. But it would define everything that followed. From this point on, there was no turning back. It was all, or nothing. Once everything was on the line, there was only one step left to take. Going all in meant leaving behind what was familiar. Elon understood that real change required distance. From comfort, from routine, from everything he had ever known. So he left. Not with certainty, not with guarantees, but with determination. The journey took him far from home, into new countries, new challenges, and complete uncertainty. He worked wherever he could. Did whatever was necessary. There were no shortcuts, no privileges, only effort. Every sacrifice had a purpose. Every obstacle became preparation. He was no longer just learning. He was no longer just experimenting. He was positioning himself, getting closer to the places where ideas could become companies, and vision could become reality. This was not success. This was the beginning of the struggle. The moment when theory met consequence. And although nothing was built yet, everything was about to be. Because from this point forward, failure would be real, but so would possibility. This chapter does not end with victory. It ends with commitment. The kind that changes lives. The kind that changes the world. And this was only the beginning. This is not the story of success. It is the story of a decision. A moment when comfort was abandoned, and uncertainty was chosen instead. Long before rockets, companies, or fame, there was a single step into the unknown. Because every future that changes the world begins with someone willing to risk everything. This was only the beginning.